Thank you. It's quite terrifying to follow that presentation because sport has always petrified me because I was never any good at it. And it was always about competition, which is fine. But if you're the loser, it takes a lot to get you back up again, which is why we're probably the generation that's most addicted to drugs, alcohol, obesity. It's true. We've never been so well off, but we've never been so unhappy. And then Tom's presentation on digital technology, that's always scared me as well. But I think that's an asset. I think if you, as a designer, there's this fear that drives us on. I believe it because we're never happy, are we? We're never happy with the status quo. We want to change everything. And that's Jonathan Ive talks about the curse of the designer. And, perhaps because we're at a discontent with where we are and what we're doing, that kind of drives us to want to recreate or create something better for the future. So who's learned something today? Or does someone want to share? What have you learned? Who had a hand up? You're all so quick. What have you learned? Design consultants don't do anything. That's a great place to start. Well, yeah, you're right, because do you know what? I've got nothing to really say to you today. I'll be honest with you. Look, I've made notes on the flight. I've just flown in from Dublin, and I've been petrified because you paid $100, $200, and we're not getting paid for this, by the way. So your money's going somewhere, but it's not to us. Just a little tip there. But you know what? But you've paid to be here today. You've chosen to spend your time here, and you're all, passionate, educated, aware individuals. What on earth can I share with you? But I can say whatever I want because I'm not being paid, and I no longer work for a consultancy because you always have to toe the company line. So you don't have to agree with this, but I spent the last 2 weeks looking at all the big design houses. I went sniffing around their website, all the big names. We won't name them, but you know who they are. So industrial design, interior design, brand houses, communication agencies, digital designs, innovation agencies, advertising agencies. And do you know what I discovered? They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing. There's 2 or 3 point of views. Thought leadership, because we're into thought leadership, because no one's got anything new to say. So we're having to find different ways to say the same things. But by and large, everybody's saying brand is fundamental to design. You cannot design without having a brand positioning or some kind of brand ethic leading you. Sustainability is fundamental to what we're doing, longevity. And the other big themes, of course, are co-collaboration and localization. Everybody's saying that. And that's all right. Some of them have very intelligent opinions, but the reason they're all saying that is because nothing has happened in our industry for 20 years. And I'm passionate. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to stand up and say that we're at the cutting edge of innovation. We're not. I don't feel we are. 20 years ago, I met Bill Moggridge. I was a young, insecure, precocious designer. And I remember, Bill Moggridge reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. He's the loveliest, gentle man in the industry. And it's in the middle of the first recession, so it was 1991. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm never going to get a job. I was never that good at college. I don't know what to do with myself. So he grabbed my wrist and he took me into the back of IDO, which was about 40 people down in Palo Alto. And he took me to his Mac very enthusiastically. And he said, listen to this. And he said, that's my cat. I said, really? He said, yeah, I've downloaded my cat onto my Mac. And it helps me relax. And he said, that's the future. This is true. And he's absolutely right. Six months later, of course, he dubbed the term interactive design, which the discipline has pretty much remained the same for the last 20 years, by and large. It's about owning a relationship with the consumer in a digital platform. That's all it is. But because we all need to make money, and because there are lots of clients out there that need educating, we've developed user interactive design and UIE and digital branding and proliferation of channel, all that good stuff. And I'm not taking anything away from that. It's all good, important stuff. But nothing has really happened in 20 years, in my opinion. So that's pretty much it. That's my point of view. I do have some slides to show you. So you might think, who the fuck is here. So I thought I would start by just talking a little bit by myself and why that Sally Ann had the wisdom or the misfortune to invite me along today. I'm going to talk loosely about what I've been doing because the last 12 months have been a complete roller coaster for me in a good way, in a great way, actually. I'll then share with you what I think is going on. I'll do it really quickly, but there are some interesting trends emerging. And at the end, it's kind of freestyle. It's just the 20 things I've learned over the past 20 years or so. I've never really thought I'm good at anything, and I still don't today. I was in a meeting with JetBlue last week, and I'm literally with their leadership team. You know, I'm with the CEO, I'm with the senior vice president of marketing. I thought, you know, they're actually paying me for my opinion here. And, you know, if someone asks me what I'm really good at, I don't really know. I'm good at asking the why question. Because normally when you ask the why question, that normally yields a more interesting answer. You know, typically industrial designers say what? You know, we need a kettle, or we need a fridge freezer, or we need a chair designed. And typically an industrial designer would say, well, what do you want? You know, do you want it to be like this? Do you want it to function in this way? So when you ask the why question, it normally yields a much more interesting answer. And if you ask the why question 3 times, then you get really to the heart of the problem. Oscar Wilde, no relation, unfortunately, but this is a quote which I discovered by accident about 6 months ago, and this is exactly where I'm at in my life. You know, if in my 20s I thought I knew what the world was about. Only the shallow really know themselves. If you ever meet somebody who feels comfortable with who they are, then, you know, get away, in my opinion. And this has been a testament to what I'm going through in the last... I had no idea I could do what I'm doing today. No idea. What I've learned is that if you surround yourself with the right people and you care about what you do and you're passionate about what you do and you do it with conviction, you can do anything you want. Anything you want. And I've always felt like an imposter. I've never felt comfortable as an industrial designer. I mean, how ironic. I'm speaking at the Industrial Design Society of America, and I feel like a complete imposter on this stage. I've never been a good designer. I've always been passionate about it. But I'm not a designer. You know, I'm someone who designs. There is a big difference. And when you look at my company, I mean, we've only been trading for 12 months. We almost went bust in the first 2 months. If you ever start your own business, there are 3 things you have to know. Cash flow, and cash flow. Oh, and tax. Tax comes and bites you on the arse. There's the 3 things. It's all about winning the work. Doing it's easy because you just employ someone who's a brilliant designer. You know, up until 35, I thought I could do everything. But when you realise you can't do everything, and there are other people that can do things much better than you, your life opens up. So we do industrial design, but we're not industrial designers. We make movies, but we're not filmmakers. We're doing little films for Costco at the moment. They're really interesting. We're designing spaces for JetBlue, but you know we're not architects. We create communications, but we're not an ad agency. You know, we do conduct research. You know, we often take it's amazing what insights you can get from a camcorder and the right questions. Design is all about asking the right questions. When you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. We work on strategy, but we're by no means business analysts. We're being paid to help companies innovate, but we're not an innovation house. We've even been asked to compose music in the last year, but we're not musicians. So who the hell are we? And I'm under no pressure to define myself. No pressure whatsoever. But what we do is we love our clients. We genuinely love them. We become friends with them. And we put them at the heart of everything we do. We become the client. I believe a good designer is almost like a method actor. You become the brief. So I've been trading for 12. All of these clients have approached us. We haven't done any marketing. I didn't have a website. I didn't even have an insurance. We find ourselves on RFP lists. I mean, I'm intrigued. I said, how did you find me? Well, we knew you left Teague. I said, yeah, but why? Why did you approach me? Well, we just hear you're up to something interesting. So it's all been word of mouth, and it's all been very organic, and it's been very, very refreshing. You know, I feel incredibly liberated. So what's interesting, I'm trying to straddle 2 audiences here. I'm conscious there are students and professionals, so it's difficult to kind of, bridge. But this is more for it's for everybody, but it's more for the professionals in the audience. What I've noticed is the diversity of the client within that mix. So within that bunch of characters, we've got a real diverse interface. So, okay, marketing you would expect. Guest experience and design, yeah, I'll go with that. Director of food and beverage. So we're recreating the way that Hilton delivers food in certain markets at the moment. One of our clients is an innovation senior vice president. We've got a CEO and we've got a founder. So we're doing work for a company down in Santa Barbara, but we're not getting paid for it. We're getting equity in the business, which is very exciting for us. So we're exploring new business models as well. And when you look at what they're asking us to do, it's a complete mixed bag. So I don't want to be deemed as an industrial designer. And by the way, what does industrial design mean? It was named by 4 or 5 individuals at the turn of the century, wasn't it? Wasn't it? We were coming out of the Industrial Revolution. You know, science and maths and engineering were at the top of the agenda. And by the way, when you have kids, they're still trained by ancient models of education. You know, by and large, most Western education today was defined at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. That's why science and maths and physics are at the top. And that's why arts and dance and creativity is generally down the bottom. Irrelevant now, irrelevant for today's business models. Anyway, so we do product design, but it's kind of tucked down there. So, yeah, this is my kind of get out of jail clause, right? We never pretend to have the answers, but we promise we will help you find the right questions. And that's the nearest I've got to some kind of mantra. My team are all industrial designers, but we don't want to do industrial design. But I have done design in the past. That was when I first graduated. Sometimes you have to think way, way, way advanced, and then you kind of bring it back. I know it's a standard model, but this is what I did an internship with Frog. So I pulled out some slides of what I was doing when I was just graduated. So I'm now back to our students in the audience. So, of course, as a student, you come up with a transparent toaster. Of course, you know, the students are obliged to come up with transparent toasters. It's a ridiculous concept. But you can't. I worked with Dan Harden there. Actually, I just saw his image on the collage before. But Dan said there's an idea here because we may not have a transparent toaster, but why don't we have a little window? And when I worked at BMW, oh yeah, here's my Einstein moment. So whenever you see an Einstein, it's like a personal learning. So you do have to think bigger. You do have to think bigger than's asked of you. I've lost pitches because we didn't think big. You have to think big. You have to go beyond the brief. You have to challenge the brief because clients love it. And you have to give more for less today. You just have to. And so BMW codified this process really, really well. So, you know, it's documented internally that in order to achieve innovation, you have to deliberately look way beyond the normal terms of reference and reach out as far as you possibly can. And then naturally, the operation, the economics of the project, internal corporate kind of bureaucracy or inertia, that will naturally bring you back. You know, we can't afford it, we can't produce it. And then you have a fight in the middle, which is what I've just been doing with seat manufacturers in Ireland for the last week. You know, we show them what we want. Of course, we can't have it, but somewhere in the middle, you reach a compromise, a bit like a relationship, actually. And then BMW call this the fixed and the fixed star. So that's when you reach the point of innovation. But the point is you have to leap out and take a leap. And I love Tom's point, actually. You have to be prepared to fail. You don't set out to fail. I mean, like today, this presentation is a whole risk. You know, standing up with you today and saying industrial design hasn't moved on for 20 years, I mean, it does take a lot of balls to do that, especially when I'm on camera. I mean, Christ knows who's going to see this one day. British Airways, we did some super work. This used to be the business seat. This is how it is now. So 3 of us completely transformed business class seating forever. And it all started with my leather Balzac armchair, actually, designed by Matthew Hilton. And a very, very simple innovation, a simple observation. We noticed that all aircraft seats were one clever Swiss Army knife, right? One seat tried to do every single function. Whereas when you go home, you have a much more dynamic relationship with your furniture, don't you? You move things around, you might have a footstool. So that was the benchmark that we went for. So and we wouldn't have got that if we wouldn't have looked outside of the usual terms of reference, right? We had to look at domestic furniture to yield quite an interesting solution. And thus we had the new flatbed from Club Wylde Flatbed. So here the huge innovation was this completely separate autonomous stall unit, which when the bed was fully deployed, connected to form the world's first lie flat in business class. And the other big innovation, of course, was we couldn't fit all the seats in the cabin. So we were trying to sketch it out, and we were there for hours, days after day, and we realized that we could, if we flipped half the cabin around, we could kind of cram more people in. And this was dubbed Club 69, but we had to change that for obvious connotations. But it stuck within the business for a while. And you've got to be brave. I mean, no one had done that before. No one had got flat sleeping into business class before. Everybody's doing it now. This kept British Airways from going bust after 9/11, and it came up. We three of us came up with the concept late one evening. And my best friend Neil, who's just quit from British Airways, he took it on a stage further. I loved the kind of romancing of the brand. I loved then the way that you can story tell, and how you can create a design language that then influences kind of everything. These great innovations. That was the overnight Tokyo service. Even down to the communications. This was a tiny budget. The whole thing was done in a day. This was it's called Raid the Larder, so you can help yourself to kind of snacks in the flight. So we took all the ingredients and we created these 4 interesting kind of characters. But I got in trouble with one of them. One of the crew took offence to it, and she refused to actually take off until we removed all the postcards, because she thought it was a comment on race. And of course it wasn't. It was just, we didn't have any comments of people with kind of, sharp chins at that stage. So, but anyways, this goes back, you have to accept that, you may get something wrong, but in the words of Philip Stark, it's better to make a creative mistake than a stagnant work in good taste. Concord, big learning here was design doesn't have to be complicated. It infuriates me when I read thought pieces and point of views from design agencies that are impenetrable. Our whole job is to make the world an easier, more beautiful and simpler place to exist. The big learning of Concord here, and it was so simple, we just took a shape from the Delta wing and we applied it across everything. So the seat, the cabin architecture, even down to the micro elements of the crockery and the cutlery. This has been a brief for probably the last 15 years or so. How can we improve perception but strip out costs from the business? So sometimes you have to look outside of the sector again for inspiration. So we developed the all-day deli, which was basically a snack process. We did away with the tray, we did away with the conventional meal service within the cabin, and we invested all of the funds in the food, and we let the food do the talking. This is old stuff, actually. And sometimes the most restrictive creative briefs allows creativity to flourish. And my first boss, Tim Ashton, said, give me the freedom of a tight brief.